slowly head over is my mic is...
Last VOD.
Well, I'm glad you got caught up on the last VOD. Let's see. I think I am peeking super hard into this. Let me pull my audio back. Very strange. Wait, what the fuck? That's not going too high. Let's see. Alright. Mic is loud and echoey. That should be a little bit better. It's a little quieter now. 1 second. Just trying to get this so I can hear myself. Alright, I'm just going to do this on my own. Monitor and output. Alright. It sounds good. I just need to get the audio better. Let's see. Boost you. Boosting? Boosting. It is giving an audio. It's giving a really bad... Oh, that's why. That should fix it. Yeah, that should get rid of the echo. It does. Good. It's picking up itself. So that's the fun part. Alright. Good. Hello everyone. I hope all of you are well today. I am now hearing myself because I left the monitor on. Because I'm fucking stupid. It's been a long fucking 24 hours. To say the least. What a long fucking 24 hours. I'm glad to be doing this, to be perfectly frank, because I'm done with politics. My brain is not going to be able to handle how things are going or where they're at. I'm having a tougher time with it. Everyone is talking about the stuff with Charlie Kirk. Everyone's talking about the stuff happening with politics and the shooter and everything that's happening. And it's a lot. It's a lot. When the FBI comes out and begs you greatly to please stop sending death threats to people of interest, you know you've got a fun time ahead of you, to say the least. Is my audio coming through okay to everyone at this point in Discord here? You doing okay? Is it okay there?
Sounds good to me, yeah.
All right, good. But
did you announce the event?
I have not. Here, let me do that. Did you had a no-show today for Twilight?
Yeah, I was surprised. Normally I get 4, 5, 6 people, but today it was weird
Well,
day, I guess.
Well, we've only got 4 in here, so I mean, again, this happens after weird. YouTube still sounds weird. Well, that's fascinating. 1 sec. Let me see if I've got some. Let me see. 1 sec. Oh, wait. That would be why. Oh, I figured it out. I'm dumb. It's not a minor echo. My cool thing that I had set up, I had forgotten to turn back into where it was. If everyone remembers, my voice was echoing. It is much better now. I set up my synths to go through so I can actually have some cool effects. So it'll be a little bit more roboty, and that's why it was. Jesus, this is... Oh, God. Whenever one of these major political events happens, people tend to take a little bit less time towards something like this. It's one of the things I've noticed in the 5+ years we've been doing Anti-Oedipus. There's 2 things that affect reading groups. School starting, because college kids don't have the time. So you have a lot of people over the summer, and then you have just a death of it in August, September. It drops, and then people start coming back, because basically it's like, I don't know if I have time for this, and then they find out that they do or don't and return. But the other is like tragedies. Depressing shit, things that affect people politically. Post-election, both times, no one showed up for like 2 weeks. So It's one of the weird things about humanity. Yeah, it's a lot. My mic's still wonky. I don't care. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck. Give that a little bit of a boost so I can get back up to a good level. All right. The reason I don't give a fuck, we are here today to do something a bit different. Here's hoping that it carries this stuff over. We're going to see if all of my little shitty settings carry over to the new scene. And we find out shortly. Good, it did. And it did. Excellent. Hello, everyone. We are continuing Klossowski's Nietzsche and the Vicious Circles, translated by Dan Smith. And it is a bear of a book to get through because I want to stop at every paragraph and just talk for fucking hours about every single thing that happens because I really, 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 really love it. We are currently in a bit of a section. One sec. Fucking mic's falling over. We're making our way through part 2 before we head into the third. The setup for the third is going to be where the brunt of the arguments are made, but this is building up all of the things that we can towards it. We are on page 28 and 29. Make our way through the section which is called The Origin of a Semiotic of Impulses, which is itself a hell of a statement. When we talk about in Deleuze or Freud or Lacan, we talk about desire. We tend to be talking, in English it's a tougher one, but when we talk about desire, we tend to be talking about not what I want, but the things that empower me, or empower, or invigorate, or impassion. The way desire flows through us really fucks us up to talk about it this way, because people tend to immediately go, oh, desire. Yeah, I desire food. I desire a car. I desire sex. Freud does this. We're literally reading an Anti-Oedipus right now, how we personify sex and make it a human sexuality rather than a non-human sexuality. Desire is tough that way. Klossowski doesn't go down that road. Klossowski instead wants to talk about impulses. And well, all of the other things I've mentioned do come straight from and are inspired deeply by Nietzsche's will, the will to power. Klossowski's take on all of this is to focus on the impulses. And the impulses are that which are the forces that make you up, that make up things that come from and are part of the processes of everyday life. And Nietzsche, who talked through the will to power and all the forces behind us, and that we personify them and we sort of take them as, claim them as our own. For Klossowski, he wants to build a semiotic of impulses. He wants to build a system of understanding about how these things come together and work. It's going to be super, super, super important. It's crazy. It's really good. So as we're making our way through, we've been spending time on the somatic parts of the body, the impulses, the way they come about, the way that for Nietzsche, as Klossowski's reading Nietzsche, the impulses of life become so central to what he's doing and how he is writing. I always have to give this little bit of intro. Klossowski's method of reading Nietzsche is not to throw out everyone else who's ever read it, but to read Nietzsche qua Nietzsche. Basically, he thinks that if someone is writing an entire book or series of books on a bit of philosophy, how they view life, how they think things work, that you can actually read straight through it in the sense of the book should be the embodiment of that thing that the person is claiming. And with Nietzsche, as we've been making our way through, the writings very much exemplify this. And Klossowski's making his way through all of this. So I'm going to read through, we're going to bust through a lot today because there's a lot of stuff here that is, I think, mostly, I don't want to say self-explanatory, but it reads plainly, it reads clearly, and I think there's discussion that's worth having as we go. But that thing that we're doing is going to be busting through it, I think. Goddard says, does Klossowski theory of drives more semiotic like Lacan? No, not like Lacan. It's close. So the semiotic of impulses is going to be very, very similar to what Guattari and Deleuze will be talking about when it comes to the way that semiotics function under capitalism. Yumslevian semiotic structure, but backed with impulses and caring about it in that way. We'll actually get through a good chunk of this today and be able to see a lot of that. So let's do this. We're talking at this point about the way that health and sickness, which is a major part not just of Nietzsche's life, but also his writing, how he comes about to care about those things, how he writes about them, and how Klossowski is seeing Nietzsche through them. So we'll make our way through page 28. Every human being can lie down, but it lies down because it is certain that it will always remain the same, that it will be able to get back up or change position. It always believes itself to be in its own body, but its own body is only the fortuitous encounter of contradictory impulses, temporarily reconciled. We'll just keep going. We started this a little bit last week, but I want to make sure we get through it. I am sick in a body that does not belong to me. My suffering is only an interpretation of the struggle between certain functions or impulses that have been subjugated by the organism and are now rivals, those which depend on me and those which escape my control. Conversely, the physical agent of myself, the supporting physicality of myself being separated, it's not one word, seems to reject any thoughts I have that no longer ensure its own cohesion. Thoughts that proceed from a state that is foreign or contrary to that required by the physical agent, which is nonetheless identical to myself. One word. The separation of the two is very important as this is being translated because it's a thing that's in the original French very strongly. I am sick in a body that does not belong to me. This is a thing, by the way, we could be saying for anyone. This is not just Klossowski given these words and this is like, oh, wait. No, this is, we are sick in bodies that don't belong to us. Each of us experiences this. My suffering is only an interpretation of the struggle between functions or impulses that I have subjugated in my organism. I see and feel and experience illness and symptoms as exerting outward force from what are forces that are seemingly contradictory or at battle. These come in two forms, those which depend on me, those which escape my control. The physical agent of myself, that's the Brooks, the physical agent of Brooks, myself, rejects thoughts I have that no longer ensure its own cohesion. Naturally pull out and have an exclusive disjunctive experience when it comes to anything that goes outside of this. Anything that goes and is not part of me, anything that is threatening to the cohesion of the organism, the totality. Thoughts that proceed from a state that is foreign or contrary to that required by the physical agent. He is not just speaking here like weirdly metaphorically. The experience of revelation, the experience of high tonality we're going to be getting into, but the experience of depression, suicidality, self-harm, all illness, whatever it may be, states that are foreign or contrary to that required by the physical agent of myself, which is nonetheless identical to myself. These thoughts are nonetheless identical. All of this is nonetheless identical. Okay? Don't worry, we're going to be getting through a lot here, but that's the thrust here. The body that does not belong to me is the idea and feeling of bodily alienation that is sort of built into a lot of this at I would say, a fairly core level. And as we're making our way through, be thinking of that. I'm going to do this last little bit and then we'll stop and we'll go through. The exclusive disjunction. it's a term that's difficult for me not to use here. I'm happy if someone wants to try to find a way to explicate it in a different way. But the disjunction is the logical term for either or, the selective process. So if two things exist, do they go together or not? Are they, this is that, this is that, this is that? Is this part of me? Yes, no. Exclusive disjunction. Yes, or. Yes, or. No, yes. Sort of a logic gate of experience that either is adding to the cohesion of the totality that I am, or I find it that it is subtracting from it, is opposing to the totality that I am, and so I am dismissing of it. This is the exclusive disjunction. It's not that you're an idiot, Yog. This is, I shouldn't have used the term. That's my fault. This stuff is one of those things that's really hard for me not to be bringing in a lot of other texts and complications, so I shouldn't say that. Think of this as what is sickness? Like, let's talk about it in much more simple experiential terms, because that's what Klossowski is doing here. When you are sick, what makes you feel sick? Well, you feel things, you experience things bodily. Let's say it's there's a slight flushness, or that sort of weird feeling you get where you can feel that you're sort of not well, or that oddness of like a scratchy throat. All of those things. This is, for me, the things that I experience that make me go, oh shit, I'm sick. But wait, what if you are a person who has decided that you're sort of flush all the time, or you have a scratchy throat? I notice these things because they are not cohesive with my understanding of myself, my physical self, the thing that I understand myself to be. The body I am sick in, the sickness and the body doesn't belong to me. When I'm well, the body does belong to me. The body is in my control, is held by me. Sickness is, I am experiencing it as a body that does not. My suffering is an interpretation of the struggle between certain functions or impulses that have been subjugated by the organism and are now rivals. There are those that depend on me and those which escape my control. The physical agent of myself seems to reject any thoughts I have that no longer ensure its own cohesion, thoughts that proceed from a state which is foreign or contrary to myself. The way that a body works is, as he says in the previous, and I think it's almost poetic, it always believes itself to be in its own body. Every human does this, but its own body is only the fortuitous encounter of contradictory impulses temporarily reconciled. They may be contradictory impulses, and they are. The need to shit and eat. These are not the same thing. The hotness/coldness, the way you feel it, that the totality of forces are naturally contradictory. When we're sick, things seem off balance. We talk about it like this, but we also seem like God. If you've ever been around someone who's genuinely ill, they feel like their body is no longer theirs, that they've lost control of it. This is how the wording they use around these things. The inability to have that cohesion. This is where we start having that breakdown. This is where we start having the breakdown. The next paragraph, I think, completes the thought. But what then is the identity of the self? It seems to depend on the irreversible history of the body, a linkage of causes and effects. But this linkage is pure appearance. The body is constantly being modified so as to form one and the same physiognomy. It is only when the resources for the body's rejuvenation are impoverished that the person becomes fixed and its character hardens. We went over this last week. The nature of experience and life is that we are constantly almost dying and being reborn. And this is happening to us constantly. We're finding new resources, new things to use, new stuff about life. The rejuvenation of the body is constant. When that ceases, when we feel this cease, when we feel these resources impoverished, the person no longer looks to the creative, the possible, but instead looks to heal, looks to regress, looks to find the thing that their character is, to harden. We may understand many things to be that which can make life better or worse. This is our understanding of these things. From the body's perspective, there isn't really, again, remove the soul from us, the internal whatness, the totality of the organism, the self. What is harming or hurting a body? Well, very little is actually truly harming or hurting. It's sickness makes you stronger in some other ways. Health can actually make people take odd chances or make you weaker. What are these forces? What are the things underneath them? How do they interact? How do they interplay? Well, this thing that is happening is actually not really a matter of finding something that's true or false to the self, but instead the way that identity forms is about this linkage through time that we have drawn, this thread through all of these different versions and all these potentials and all these forces of ourselves. And this thread that we've created obscures the reality that the body is always being modified, is always being healed or broken or changing or whatever it is. It's always breaks in the flux, the ever-going change, and the breaks of life are constant. And when that is going, we have a plasticity that allows vitality to be experienced, that allows growth, that allows outward growth, that allows us to become something more. But when that rejuvenation is impoverished, when we are ill in one way or another, that includes mentally or otherwise, we move to a point where the person becomes fixed. The character is hardened. The character is in quotes here, and there's so much emphasis. This is my true self coming out. You're fighting the pain or the world to try to get back to that thing. Again, linking bodily illness with mental normativity or how you see yourself. It's all one and the same set of impulses, one and the same set of relations of them. And of course, this is building really into the next paragraph ultimately, but I want to stop there and make sure that we're all generally digging on this. I see you writing, August. If anyone's ever had their life turned upside down with sickness, you probably understand the drive to come. Well, and I would say that also follows for extreme. We've all experienced yesterday, one way or another, some level of minor, major trauma or a world event that we want to see things get back to the way they were, or that I think is an event that's actually going to fundamentally change how we relate to each other politically. That thing doesn't really exist. It's a narrative moment, and we're all experiencing it and building it in some really unique ways. But that thing that we're doing is either taking it in and using as resources for rejuvenation, or we're finding that our rejuvenation, our ability to rebuild and build new, is impoverished. And so our character hardens. And this is illness and health. Again, Klossowski here is talking through the era of Nietzsche's writings as he moved into writing some of his more important pieces in his better work. For Klossowski, this is the thing to notice. Nietzsche went through these extreme health events that as we went through his letters, and Klossowski runs us through those, he noticed that his pain was crazy, and the way that he saw the world was this, that, and the other. And slowly he started to realize the way he felt, the way he interacted imminently with those impulses became important. These are how these things come together. This is the push at the base of this. And this is the next bit is kind of going to build on that. Again, we read most of this last week, but yes. How do you see this in terms of ontological difference? We're getting there. Illness, we're getting there. I want to leave a lot of the more complex questions because most of this is just building and laying groundwork for what is going to be chapter 3 and on, where Klossowski makes his claims and actually builds his systems. So it's going to be a bit of a thing. Breaks are successions of functioning. Yes, correct. Are they literal breaks? I mean, all of it's literal. There's no such thing as metaphorical here. So it's something stops working, something becomes disconnected, something dies, machine dies, whatever it is, all the parts of all of it. And the production of that process becomes, morphed and changed because of it. The inability to let go and move on from life event is mentally the equivalent of being physically diseased. I wouldn't say it as extremely, but it's going to be really close. We'll follow for the next couple of paragraphs, Murtazo, because we're going to be getting through a good chunk of that. But the different ages of the body, for this are infancy, childhood, etc. Different ages of the body are all so many different states, each giving birth to the next. The body is the same body, only insofar as a single self is able to and wills to be merged with it, with all its vicissitudes. The cohesion of the body is that of the self. The body produces this self, and hence its own cohesion. But for itself, this body dies and is reborn numerous times. Deaths and rebirths that the self pretends to survive in its illusory cohesion. In reality, the ages of the body are simply the impulsive movements that form and deform it, and finally tend to abandon it. But just as these impulses are resources for the body, they are also threats to its cohesion. The purely functional cohesion of the body, in the service of the self's identity, is in this sense irreversible. The ages of the self are those of the body's cohesion, which means that the more this self begins to age in and with the body, and the more it aspires to cohesion, the more it also seeks to return to its starting point, and thus to recapitulate itself. The dread of the physical dissolution requires a retrospective vision of its own cohesion. Thus, because the self, as a product of the body, attributes this body to itself as its own, and is unable to create another, the self, too, has its own irreversible history. We tend to think of ourselves as existing constantly through time, that we ourselves is a constant. Our true self is the thread that carries through from birth all the way to now. We have a soul, we have blah, 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 all this shit. But it's not so much that. The body is the same body, sure, but only insofar as a single self is able to and wills to be merged with it, with all its vicissitudes, the changes, the accidents, the contingent problems that need to be accepted by this. As you grow and as time goes on, life affects the body, and you may have taken on scars, you may have taken on pain, you may have taken on amputated leg in a more extreme version, or just gotten used to things that are counter to your body. These changes that happen, if we talk of ship of Theseus, which we kind of did last week, the ship of Theseus is about if we take one part away from another, blah, blah, blah. And the question here is a little bit more extreme. It's not taking apart. It's what if you take it apart and you build it with different stuff? Like at what point is it no longer that same ship? At what point do you no longer claim your body? Because the problem is the cohesion.
Counter to the body. Do you mean counter to the model or the?
We're right now, I think we're talking about the human body.
Okay.
And I have you very quiet for some reason, August.
Do I need to get closer to my mic?
No, you're good. You're good. There we go. Well, right now I'll get to the model in a second. You're jumping just slightly ahead, but yes, we are talking about the model, which is the self. The model's the self, by the way, not the body. Because the body is the forces. Your body exists as kind of whatever's happening to it at the time. Cold, heat, burns, scar tissue, too much light, too little light, poor food, good food, whatever it is. And over time, as life is experienced, the body, we claim it as the same body, even though the cells are always dying and it's constantly changing. I've gained chunk weight. I used to be really, really fit in skin. I used to be crazy skinny before I was fit. I have weird knees because I've damaged them a lot. I've had to have my nose rebuilt. Like, is this Brooks's body? Well, yeah, the body's the same body, only insofar as a single self is able to and wills to be merged with it. That this is Brooks. I claim this is Brooks. Despite its vicissitudes, the relived thing, the cohesion of the body is that of the self. This cohesion that is experienced is actually the self. The body produces this self. I don't exist as a soul outside of it. There's no transcendent sort of thing. I am produced from this body, which is fucking weird because I claim this body then as my own. I'm produced from it. I claim it as my own, despite everything it changes. And everything as it changes, this process that happens, the lived body, the model of the self, and the back and forth, the recurring pattern is a very good way to put it. I am that. The body and the self, is there a difference? That's kind of the question here. We'll get there. Because for itself, this body dies and is reborn numerous times, deaths and rebirths. The self pretends to survive in its illusory cohesion. I had to go under knife and I've been knocked out in surgeries multiple times. How am I sure that not that I died and like I'm in some dream? None of that stupid shit. Is this self the same self? Was my body the same body? In reality, the ages of the body are simply the impulsive movements that form and deform it and tend to abandon it. But just as these impulsions, the impulses of my body, however they're going, the impulsions of the body, the impulsions are resources for the body. They are threats to its cohesion. I don't think I need to explain that too much, actually. I'll keep going. The purely functional cohesion of the body in the service of the self's identity is in this sense irreversible. We can't go back. We can't undo this. You can't break this apart, not significantly. This is not the setup for this. The self that's created by the body naturally is looking back on it as a totality, even though the impulses are completely all over the place and they're contradictory and fighting. I think that
addresses my question, because I was specifically sort of asking about like the phrasing of counter to the body, but I'm not sure that that made sense to me without sort of understanding if we're working with the self or the body in that phrasing, I guess.
We'll be getting to it. So again, he's laying things out that in chapter 3 are going to be really, really particularized and made into that, so we can get there. But he's talking through this about like I read this, and he shared some of Nietzsche's text, and you're doing Twilight of the Idols, and you've done a few of his other works. If you've read Nietzsche, there is this dichotomy, this self versus body. My body betrays me. Well, what does that even mean? I'm betraying myself. The self is made from the body, but the self being made from the body also imposes a cohesion on the body. How does the body react to that? How one is made from the other, but then the other is dependent on it. So they both have this weird interrelation. I did a video on Simondon on Monday. This is that type of thing. In that video, I talk about Simondon's concept of how things become sort of these odd milieu of elements that we totalize and we pretend are like a single thing. He uses the example all the time, and it's a great example. It's a very specific type of electric generator. And what this French inventor did is he took a generator and he basically put the generator part, which gets really, really hot. He put it in oil in a case, and then the whole thing they submerged in water with the propeller that drives the generator. And it's clever because it uses the water and the cooling of the water to cool the generator, which lets everything move faster. So as the water moves faster, it stirs more, but there's more. Because it's not just the water doing it, it's also that as the oil heats inside of the generator, which is in the crankcase, all of that actually causes, in that turbulence, more heat extraction. There isn't really a one thing that this generator is doing, but instead one impinges on the other, which builds on the other. And these reinforcing loops aren't really in control of one or the other. It's not that one is doing this or that. It's not that it's built with intention. It's none of these things for Simondon. For him, he sees all of this as coextensive. This is the conversation that we're starting to have right now, is the body, which Nietzsche is absolutely taking as a serious separate thing, versus the self, or the model of who I am, which is incredibly important also to Nietzsche. And he's noticing in this paragraph, he's noticing it isn't really one that drives the other. Sure, the self is built from the body. There's biological processes and forces and impulses and all kinds of things that are, fighting and doing all kinds of shit, and your body's doing all kinds of stuff. And the self seems to be separate from that. But is it? Like, that's the thing for him, is he's like, well, wait, if it's separate, we have a whole bunch of problems, because the way that the body exists is the body dies and is reborn constantly. So if it's constantly doing that, then it should be producing a new self, which it is. But the self is able to sort of fall back on all of that production, not to directly invoke another book, but that is what is happening here, fall back on all production. And that self is able to say, yeah, this is all still me. This is all still me. Yeah, this is me too. Oh yeah, no, sure, I was born with all of my fingers, but who I am is someone who has the tip of their pinky cut off because of an accident. That's me. What the fuck? Well, it's because of how these things exist in time, how the body produces the self, but also the self conditions what the body's capable of. It isn't that there is a self and a body. It's sure, we can talk about them the same way we talk about water and oil in that crankcase, but they are working together to do the things they do. There isn't really one that creates the other. So the self is emergent from the body. The sense of self ties together body iterations. Isn't that a contradiction? No. The self is emergent from the body, and it's, by existing, falls back on and conditions what the body believes it's capable of, and which in turn then hardens. So again, if the body is producing new all the time, then the self is joining that sort of journey. The self does that. But at the same time, if it's not, it's crushing itself, and it slowly is hardening itself, and it's creating a space where, oh, I can't do those things because my body isn't, because I'm not the kind of person who does that, even though it's kind of limited by prior experience and not really by, true emergence. It's a different type of setup. Sam asks, this is probably going ahead much, but does the self constantly reconstruct an identity history at each moment? You're totally going to be getting there. We're totally going to be getting there. It might have to do with the title of the book, but we'll get there. We'll get there. That might just literally be about the title of the book. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's probably how I'd phrase that, Martazo. Because that's the thing he's sort of saying there, the ending here. Thus, because the self, as a product of the body, attributes this body to itself as its own. There's a heavy-handed towards property ownership, control, domination, subjugation. The body is to itself as its own. It is unable to create another. The self too has its own irreversible history. The self can't create a new body. It's not magic. Just like the body can't create some self that contradicts itself. It's producing the self. The self as a product, attributes the body as its own, but is unable to create another body. They're tied together that deeply. That's the next thing here. The identity of the self, along with that of its own body, is inseparable from a direction or meaning, sense, logic of sense. Logic of sense from Deleuze, this type of sense, this sense meaning, is inseparable from the direction or meaning formed by the irreversible course of a human life. It experiences this direction or meaning as its own accomplishment, whence the eternity of meaning once and for all. Meaning here is the sense of the thing. This is not the dictionary meaning or the definition. So don't fucking go down that road with me. Won't be in the mood. But instead, pardon me. But this thing that is being made here that they're talking about, they're coming to that point of like making that final thing. This is the culminating statement of what we've been reading today and a little bit before. The identity of the self, along with that of its own body, is inseparable from a direction or sense formed by the irreversible course of human life. How does time work? Does time go in 6 directions, or does it go in one direction? The answer is one. We make sense of things in this way. This is how the meaning that is made by us through time is explicitly tied to the direction that life seems to, or the sense we have of life, the irreversible course of life. Benjamin Button eventually does die as a baby. Like, no matter what, we can't sense or we can't consider or have a sense of our own life that isn't directional. As such, the identity of the self, along with that of its own body, is inseparable from a direction or meaning formed by the irreversible course of human life. We get older. That's it. This is not a simple physical fact. The reality is there is a temporal symmetry to how we make sense of things, how we understand them. This is Deleuze's Logic of Sense, first series that he has in there, where he talks about when we speak of Alice getting bigger, we understand implicitly that this exists in time. We don't think of it any other way because we exist within time and things exist within time. Alice, at no point, is actually getting bigger. This necessitates a vector. It has to be from one measurement to another. And in fact, if we take a photo of Alice, you can't tell if she's getting bigger or smaller, unless you have motion blur happening, I guess. But if we say that, it makes sense. Alice is getting bigger. But you're placing this understanding of time, this understanding of life automatically in it. The identity we have exists and bodily exists with the direction. All of this does. It experiences, the identity of the self experiences. It is the identity of the self, that thing which you claim that you are. It experiences this direction or meaning as its own accomplishment, whence the eternity of meaning once and for all. So now, this emergence that is due to the conflicting nature of forces and the emergence of the self from that then recaptures these forces for itself and claims them in totality as the bodily experience that moves forward in time. I did that. That's me. I did that. It's me. I got to tell you, I got older and I got wiser. And I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 5 years. I learned a lot about Deleuze and Guattari. I have spent, I've claimed this for myself. I have gotten in better shape. I've gotten in worse shape. I've gotten more sick. I've gotten less sick. I've gotten healthier. Really? You've done all of those things, huh? The directionality is now ego accomplishment. It's claiming ego accomplishment. basically, inside of all of this. And the temporality of life that is inherent to things somehow becomes something we're doing, something we control. Yeah. Sorry, getting lost in the writing again. Reminds me a bit of Kierkegaard, his self that is a reference to itself in reference to itself. It is, it's close. Here we're talking about the self in the sense of that which is produced by the impulses of the body and the space that is the body or my body. I like to make the joke when we talk about this within Anti-Oedipus too. Where are the edges of your body? Well, you determine that because it's based on what you control. It's literally based on what you control. That's it. But the way humans exist, that's not really the case. The brain is a function for remembering things. But if I, for example, use a Post-it note to write something down, and then I see that tomorrow and I remember the thing I needed to remember, the Post-it note is part of my brain. Was the pen part of my nervous system when I wrote it? When I control it, it is. I used to make the joke about Harry Potter, where it's like, I don't know if I'm controlling the wand or the wand's controlling me, because it's such a part of you. Like, this is what we do. Children do this, but we do this a lot. And that thing that's happening there is actually the self that's produced by the body that is constantly and forever changing, because the body is as well, claiming the body and all of its changes for itself, and also claiming in that, because it's produced in time, right? It's produced over time. It exists temporally. It's creating the thread through all of those things and claiming the thread as well. And not just the thread, but also the direction of the thread, even though no one has the ability to slow down time or to reverse it or to make it work differently than it does. Yet we claim it as like a thing we did. And it's going to be like the idea of eternal truth this is a critique of the idea of anything transcendent. And I mean that, like anything transcendent. That's one of the reasons I really like this book. I think the last 5 paragraphs have like really just done a brilliant critique of transcendence. It experiences this direction and meaning as its own accomplishment, whence the eternity of meaning once and for all. It's presumed to be eternal. It's built to be eternal. It's emergently seeming eternal and claiming that for all, as if it's atemporal. So the very notion of the ego is a narcissistic impulse. No. It wouldn't go that far. That's adding layers. We're not doing that quite yet. The notion of the ego, or the way the ego exists, is produced by the body. It's an emergent capacity of extremely complex systems and forces that build in very particular ways. How should we explain to other people that this is something to overcome? It's not something to overcome. Yep, see, that's not, you're jumping ahead, Glit. That's not what we're talking about here. This is not, the reason I love a lot of this, this is not a ascetic view of overcoming the self or getting back to the body. There is no dichotomy between the self and body. They're systems working coextensively. That's kind of the point. And so the coextensivity. Oh, sorry. That word made my brain pop. The coextensivity, which I don't think is actually a word as I'm saying it now. That's the drive that they're pushing here. That's the thing they're coming about, that, hey, the self, which we consider so separate, I think, therefore I am a unique self. All of that shit is antithetical to what they're talking about here across everything. Coextensive, mutual, reciprocal, reciprocal causality. God damn it. You fuckers giving me words. So is there kind of an implicit rejection of asceticism here? To deny the body is to deny self? Yeah. There isn't a break between the two. And Nietzsche is very explicit about this in his writings. And some people have taken that, like the Ubermensch and all that. They take that to mean this, oh, then it should be about indulgence and overdoing it. It's like, no, because that's like this. That's the opposite of what he's talking about. He's talking about understanding, and we'll get into Klossowski's take on it, which I think is the best reading of Nietzsche. But it's not that the body and mind are things that we need to tend to. We do, but how we tend to them and how we think about them should be not as that they are different things or that they are the same thing, but that they are processes. And how those processes come about, because the body creates the self. The self falls back on the body. This process happens, and it happens in time. And as we become aware of this and aware of it happening when it happens to ourselves, we can have an odd moment, they say Nietzsche's terms, a high tonality of the soul, but that we fall away from that too. We'll get there. We're actually going to be getting to a decent amount of that today. So I want to keep doing it. So self actually the place or topos of a thing is the surface of the body. Body here is simply the thing in its physical extendedness. Yes. This is where we start. We don't need to get there quite yet. But yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. But we don't need to get there quite yet because we've got some language they want to talk about. We're going to go through some Klossowski stuff. What is singular? Is the body or the self a simulacrum of that? We'll get there. We're going to keep moving forward a little bit. Just a little bit. Don't worry. Just a little bit. Are there any questions on the phrasing in this? Not grand existential questions, because I'm not going to be able to answer those significantly. But I want to finish this little section, and then we can stop again. There's like a few short little paragraphs here, and then we can make our way into the larger ideas. But there's a final point Klossowski wants to get to here. But any questions on this so far? All right. There is in Nietzsche an initial conception of, this is the end of the line. We'll have to go back. There is in Nietzsche an initial conception of fatality that implies this irreversible course, insofar as the self cannot escape from it. At first sight, this love for the fatum and hence for the irreversible seems to have been Nietzsche's primary imperative. But beginning with the experience of the eternal return, which announced a break with this irreversible once and for all, Nietzsche also developed a new version of fatality, that of the vicious circle, which suppresses every goal and meaning, since the beginning and the end always merge with each other. From this point on, Nietzsche would no longer be concerned with the body as a property of the self, but with the body as the locus of impulses, the locus of their confrontation. Since it is a product of the impulses, the body becomes fortuitous. It is neither irreversible nor reversible, because its only history is that of the impulses. These impulses come and go. The circular movement they describe is made manifest as much in moods as in thought, as much in tonalities of the soul as in corporeal depressions, which are moral insofar as the declarations and judgments of the self recreate in language a property that is in itself inconsistent and hence empty. Goddamn, I really fucking love this book. Okay, when people read Nietzsche, and what we've talked about so far, you would be forgiven if you went, hey, boy, fate is it. The body's doing stuff. And there's a difference between fate and destiny. I just need to explain real quick. Destiny is a written thing thing that you will end up finding a way to get to. It's transcendent. It's outside of us. Destiny is always transcendent and outside of us. Fate is different. Fate exists by necessity, where because that ball is rolling downhill, it's going to end up at the bottom of the hill. Destiny would be saying, someday a ball will end up at the bottom of that hill. It seems like the same thing. They're not the same thing. And I'm giving a shitty minor version of it, but it's incredibly important to see the difference. Because here, when we're talking about, well, the body produces the soul, the self, the me, and I fall back on it, wouldn't that mean the body? Because the body is physical processes. A physicalist could easily say, wait, then everything is fate. And within Nietzsche, who absolutely wrote about embracing your fate, amor fati, the love of one's fate, the acceptance of fate, and that irreversibility of things. It'd be easy to go, oh, well, Nietzsche wanted us to just accept things as they are. But no. Oh, far from it. It's actually accepting the impulses. What are you talking about, Brooks? But the impulses, how do you get away from those things? Well, wait. It's because of the eternal return, because of what we're going to be discussing, because the title of this book, which I'm not going to explain in this paragraph, but I'm saying what he's saying here, there's a new version of fatalism, of fatality. Now all I can think of is the vicious circle being a move in Mortal Kombat. That's a weird choice of words. Nietzsche developed a new version of fatalism, that of the vicious circle. The vicious circle suppresses every goal and meaning. Since the beginning and the end merge with each other. Because they, like I was talking about with Simondon, because the body and the self aren't really separate parts of a process. It's not one, then the other. It's one produces the other, which conditions the first, which conditions the second. And now you're fucked up. Like now everything's gummed up. They always end up merging with each other. There's something else happening here. It isn't simply a fatalism of physical processes and thrusts and impulses. There's something more. And as he comes up with the eternal return, as he runs through the eternal return, and as we're going through this, the thing to be considering is this. Nietzsche went through all these illnesses, began to write about it, and he wrote extensively about it. Came back from this time, as we were reading through these letters and this break he was taking and learning about his bodily movements and how he formed and his impulses. But he created from here the eternal return, this break from the fatalism that represented early Nietzsche, very early Nietzsche. And says instead, no, now Nietzsche is no longer concerned with the body as property of the self, which is what we were talking about. It's very much the language used. It's, the self owns the body, and if you just have a good enough understanding of things, you can control the body, or that the body produces the self, and there's a fatal. No, it's not that. It's the body is the locus, the place that these things come together. The impulses confront each other, the locus of that confrontation. And since it is a product of the impulses, the body is a place of fortuity. There's a lot said in that, but it is neither irreversible nor reversible, because its only history is that of the impulses. If the body is a contingent product of all of these impulses colliding, which it is, as we've talked about, as they've gone through, this locus of the impulses works differently. These impulses come and go. The circular movement they describe is made manifest as much in moods as in thought. The body, instead of this contingent instead of being like a substantive substrate that is constant or existing through time, it's instead contingently created. It's accidental. The body is fortuitous. It's a place of emergence, a place of creation, a place of accidental creation, a chance. A fortuitous event is that which is based in chance. Your body is chance. And because of that, there is no linear temporality, not in that sense. We don't have irreversibility or reversibility because there's no chance doesn't work like that. We like to think it does, but that's not really how these things come together. Instead, this impulsion, this temporality of the impulses is what's happening here. And it's a very different thing. These impulses come and go. The circular movement they describe is made manifest as much in moods as in thought, as much in tonalities of the soul as in corporeal depressions, which are moral only insofar as the declarations and judgments of the self recreate in language a property that is in itself inconsistent and hence empty. When we speak, we do so declaratively and with judgment. The self does this. And in our speech, in our written word, in language, we are recreating an attribute, a property, a false consistency that is in itself inconsistent and hence empty. The underlying reality of things doesn't have any stable properties, but language attributes to them that. We do this when we speak, when we talk. We give voice to this. This is Genealogy of Morals 101, which I recommend very, very, very much you read. But this is the forces of resentment coming back, the forces of things. We give in language voice to these forces that fall back and give us a feeling of or an experience of eternity and a consistency that simply isn't actually there in any capacity. We do everything we can to prove it, but the impulses come and go, and the circular movement they describe is manifest as much in moods and thought, as much in tonalities and corporeal depressions. I really like the language here. But this is like gay science. Nietzsche goes over at length how moods and consciousness are inextricably linked, and how they come about, that we tend to have the high tonalities of the soul versus depressive. We tend to think of the depressive as the body doing this to us, or the darkness, or this like down to the high tonalities, the rise up, the ideality. We're so happy, everything's wonderful. We're closer to God. We're closer to ground and earth. It's so sad here. Like we give ourselves these tones and languages and setup, and all of these things are built together. So gay science, he goes over it at length. Beyond good and evil, he has the noble types and base types that he talks about, trying to get beyond good and evil to good and bad, a very Spinoza thing. But the base types of experience and how their affects change us, how moral judgments and moods come together in Daybreak. This becomes so central to Nietzsche. It's in everything he begins to write across the board. And yes, I will actually agree with Afnan. There's a lot of Heidegger in here. I don't think Heidegger did a very good job of explicating it, but this is Stimmung for Heidi. It's kind of a big deal, I'd say. Is that fair, Afnan? Just as I mean, again, I'm not Mr. Heidegger or anything, but being in time his stuff on Stimmung, this feels like very much that. But not just him. There's a lot of people throughout this. Obviously, this is... there's a lot in here. This is Lacan. This is Deleuze, Guattari. There's some really interesting stuff. I'm seeing François Julien in here. Jean-Claude Martin. Some really great thinkers. Kristeva. Like there's... Klossowski is so fucking foundational how he reads Nietzsche. It starts becoming just so clear so many people read him and didn't think twice about it. which is like, and people just love this book. It's very good. So the journey is the destination. There's a process. It's not that anything is anything. It's that there's a process of things. And we'll get to that not far off. Don't worry. Don't worry. I know I keep stringing you along, but it is a book. So that kind of is how that goes. R1 says, sounds like the self is the layer that interprets everything, but at the same time, it is that which causes the interpreting because they're the same thing. The impulses decode them. Impulses, I would be hesitant to say impulses decode themselves. Impulses are impulses. Where they collide or come together or connect and disconnect, you could say. There is a centrality that seems to be the center of that within the organism of the body. This is decisions made by how those things come together, and the disconnection and then the resulting thing is actually, to me, coded or given meaning or given sense by the self that is emergent, because it looks back on all of the production that has built it and says, yes, that's the good stuff. Oh, that's not the good stuff. And kind of runs that way. I just want to say, I just got a notification I have to mention just because it's surreal, and I'm going to end up having to do a stream later tonight. Nepal's government was overthrown recently. I don't know if everyone's seen this. It's been pretty amazing to watch because it's like kids. It's amazing. They just chose their new leader via Discord poll. That's a real fucking thing that happened today. Today, they Discord poll. So I guess we can actually talk about Discord as being politically important. But I'm sorry, I just, in my head, having Discord be that important to things, we live in a very strange timeline. But I like that. So at this point, I want to keep going. I
wanted to comment on something.
Please, go for it. Let me make sure people can hear you, because the audio's been funny today. Go for it, Afnan.
It's all right. Yeah.
You're good.
So the reason why, I mentioned Heidegger on this, because obviously he's the one who came before, but not to say that he did it better or not. What I meant is exactly because Heidegger, the difference between him and Klossowski in mentioning the illness or trying to explicit is that Heidegger draws directly the ontological difference, and that's why I asked you from it. Because in endless, you don't feel like yourself. You don't feel yourself. You feel different.
Yes.
But this different, as you mentioned it, you explained it very well, which is your body seems foreign to you. And Heidegger speaks, for example, of the cell's invasion, which is like when you think of illness and you start thinking of the cell invasion, like cancers or something. I had cancer before, and when you think of it, it's something crazy. Your own body is attacking you. There is something within you that grows and tries to take over, and so this what Heidegger starts to call as the distort, the absence within ourselves. And that's what Nietzsche, that's what I mentioned, that's exactly what Nietzsche said when you said it, when he said that that's when yourself starts fighting. It starts fighting its own creation, its own body, because what happens over here is in a tool analysis way of the tool, we take for granted our bodies until we get ill. And this is exactly the ontological difference, because this is exactly the moment of withdrawal, the moment we focus on that the things are not actually what we think. They can withdraw. They have They have a difference within them. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the reason I didn't directly address it is because the next section starts with the sentence, despite all this, Nietzsche would not forgo cohesion.
Yeah,
so we're getting to it. We're getting two things, and so I'm always hesitant. I'm always hesitant to bring things up because at some point we're going to be just talking about chapter 3, and I kind of want to be careful about that. But yes, please go ahead.
Sorry. No. The reason why I mentioned it's because when you said Heidegger, it seemed as if I was trying to say Heidegger did it better than Klossowski, but that's what I meant. What I meant is Klossowski over here in this point.
So here's the thing. Let me just say, Klossowski is not reading this in a vacuum. He really brings in other thoughts. He just doesn't give a shit about Heidegger's interpretation of Nietzsche, which is really going to be weird because we're going to start seeing Stimmung. Klossowski uses it in the original book. Like he's straight up uses it because it's a word Nietzsche used, but not like it gets really hairy when you start talking about like where these things come from, but he is very aware of the other writers of his time and very much of Heidegger.
No, it doesn't matter. It's not like that. What I meant is Klossowski doesn't. It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting once like maybe not in a group reading. It's interesting if you've read, like for you, you've read all of those. So maybe you would like to see the links between the systematic relations within the philosophy. But yeah, for Klossowski, for the book itself, I'm not sure how you can draw from it the ontological difference from the illness. That's why I mentioned Heidegger in this, because I think Klossowski, when he speaks about the illness, although he clearly knows the ontological difference, he doesn't actually mention it. He doesn't actually put it straightforward that it's at this moment when something like it's a tool analysis. So like
I'll have to think about that because I think I know what you mean, but I also think let's revisit this in a few weeks.
Yeah, no problem. That's why I asked you, because I wanted to see what's your take on the ontological difference from this. Yeah, all right.
I think there is, in a few weeks, I think I'll be able to answer it better without, or we can talk about it offline some other time. Not on stream, not during the reading, because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole too quick, because I want to make sure we get to a handful more paragraphs today, because it's, here's where we start making our way to the eternal return. Conceptually, how it shows up, where it shows up, and how Klossowski's reading it. This is, again, how Nietzsche made his way to what was his post-illness writing, his later writings that are, I believe, exceptional. And there's some difficulties I ran into. And I'll just continue. But despite all this, Nietzsche would not forego cohesion. He struggled at one and the same time with the to and fro movement of the impulses for a new cohesion between his thought and the body as a corporealizing thought. To do this, he followed what he called in several places the guiding thread of the body. By examining the alternations in his own volutudinary states, he sought to follow this Ariadne's thread through the labyrinth of impulses. Jesus Christ, the number of fucking words in this. There's more than a little bit of Greek in this. It's going to be a whole thing. But, so, we could look at, and we could say that this process, as I was saying, there's like two parts of this. Oh, we've got this, the body that's producing the self, and the self then comes back on the body, and there's kind of this to and fro movement of the two. I've already argued against it a little bit. I can't help it. But that thing we could think, but Nietzsche doesn't have the two. It's easy to do. Freud, for example, the creation of the ego, and then the superego, and then the self, like these things are separate from libidinal impulses. You could very much have these things be incohesive. But for him, he really wanted to keep that. He struggled with the to and fro movement of the impulses for a new cohesion between his thought and the body as a corporealizing thought. The phrasing here is very important. The corporealizing, the thought that becomes bodily, or the thought that embodies itself. It's not trying to find a mind-body dualism, a self-body dualism, or replace one with the other. But instead, thought is a bodily process, and that these things might come at the same time. And for him, he went straight to the guiding thread of the body, the Leferen de Lebes, which I'm sure there's a better pronunciator of that anywhere in this world besides me. But the way that he started playing with this guiding thread, the conducting thread, the conductor, like in an orchestra or on a train, again, not as metaphor, but as principle. This became central to a lot of what Nietzsche wrote. By examining the alternations, the cycling between health and illness, again, as we've been going over, the alternations in his own, it just means health or illness states, the states of his health. Velutudinary means like sickness, sickly. It's Latin. It's annoying. I hate it. But by going and looking at his health through his sickness and his sickness through his health, which is a fucking quote from Nietzsche, the Ariadne's thread he would carry through. It's an old Greek story about the Ariadne, the thread that basically like breadcrumbs that you'd carry through the darkness, find your way through confusion, find your way through danger, and through the labyrinth specifically of drives, because they are necessarily contradictory. They're necessarily colliding with each other. They're not the kind of thing that we can just see. So the ability to sort of run through all of that with that thread, keep that with him, and find a way to make through this is kind of his big push. And that's what we're going to be going through this. This is the new little mini section inside of this that Klossowski's going through. When we talk about convalescence, we're talking about recovery. It's an important phrasing, just important when we come up, because it's a lot of the languages will just say a little out of time and place for us today. But convalescence was the signal of a new offensive of the body, this rethought body, against the thinking Nietzsche self. This in turn paved the way for a new relapse. For Nietzsche, each of these relapses, up until the final relapse, heralded a new inquiry, a new investment in the world of the impulses, and in each case, he paid the price of an ever-worsening illness. In each case, the body liberated itself a little more from its own agent, and in each case, this agent was weakened a little more. Little by little, the brain was forced to approach the boundaries that separated it from these somatic forces. Somatic means of the body, in that the reawakening of the self in the brain was brought about ever more slowly. And even when it occurred, it was these same forces that seized hold of the functional mechanism. The self was broken down into a lucidity that was more vast but more brief. The equilibrium of the functions was reversed. The self lay dormant in words, in the fixity of signs. The forces were awakened all the more in that they still remained silent. And memory, finally, was detached from the cerebral self, a memory that could no longer designate itself except in accordance with its most distant motifs. Fuck. Sorry, I gush a lot, I know. I just really like how Klossowski writes like all of this. Nietzsche would recover and then he would relapse. Nietzsche would recover and he would relapse. But this isn't just a simple pattern of us going, oh, he got better and then got sicker. That's what, not as Nietzsche experienced it or as he wrote about it. We saw that in the letters already. You can go read them. I think Cambridge published most of these at this point. but it's very much not how Nietzsche experienced it. It was an interesting setup for him. The body was the convalescence recovery was a new offensive of the body. Think of a army at war, right? Like, it's an offensive of the body, a rethought body against the thinking Nietzsche self. They're being very explicit here when he writes this. The thinking Nietzsche self is like, it's meant to be, as I read it, a little bit of a emphasis on the thing he's waging war against, or he's finding is being waged war. Because in turn, as the body would recover, it would work against his self, the aware Nietzsche, the ego conscious rational Nietzsche, the thinking Nietzsche self, and in turn would pave way for new relapse. And each of these relapses up till the final one heralded a new inquiry, new investment in the world of impulses. In each case, he paid the price of an ever worsening illness. He would get better. He would relapse. He would then have a deeper grasp of what's happening. And then his illness would therefore, with that, worsen. His recovery led to relapse because of the method of what he was doing until his full breakdown in 1889 is kind of the comment being put here. He paid the price. All of that is sort of the language being placed. In each case, the body liberated itself a little more from its own agent. And in each case, this agent was weakened a little bit more, just a little more every single time. Little by little, the brain forced to approach the boundaries that separated it from its bodily forces, in that the reawakening of the self in the brain was brought about ever more slowly. Klossowski is just describing Nietzsche's writings about his illness at this point. Like, I don't know of another way to even describe it except that. Like, this is how Nietzsche really went wild, talking about every time this would happen, and how he would basically begin to defeat himself without knowing it as a time. He would have these high tonality moments of illness, mental, of that would be seized back and forth. These same forces seize hold of the functional mechanism, the brain being reduced to its functions, not the self that's made through this. The forces that were externalized now are internal to the brain. The breaking down of this brain-body boundary is what Nietzsche wrote about, and it's what Klossowski's echoing here. This is not a one defeating the other, but instead the boundary breaking down, not just pure and simplistic sort of opposing. And that's the line. That's more vast but more brittle. The lucidity more vast, more brittle. The way he was more fragile, his self was more fragile, his awareness was more fragile. What he went through, more fragile. It's amazing writing. Sorry. The equilibrium of functions was reversed. The self lay dormant in words, in the fixity of signs. The forces were awakened all the more in that they still remained silent. And memory finally was detached from the cerebral self of memory. This is Klossowski writing about the breakdowns of Nietzsche, as Nietzsche wrote about him. Nietzsche didn't put a lot of this into this clear of words, but it's a lot. I find this part a lot. If you've ever had a break or anything mental, it's really an amazing little bit here. Yourself, the self as Nietzsche, and as he was getting closer to the end, and as he continued to break down and experience and have these higher moments where he was absolutely writing and manic, then excessively depressive, broken, almost catatonic, then manic, that the process, the self that would exist there would become dormant, lay dormant in words, the fixity of signs, the forces awakened all the more in that they still remained silent. Memory detached from cerebral self, memory that could no longer designate itself except in accordance with its most distant motifs. It's really just beautiful. Autonomous memory becoming central to it. The not about the recent patterns or the recent things that are there, but instead the memory almost becoming remote, distant, not driving that thing in and of itself. Again, the temporality of these things, the way that it's so good. Sorry, it's just a lot to sort of take in. And I know it's a lot to read. If there's a thing to take from this is driving for Klossowski. He is talking about Nietzsche's writings as he makes his way through all of his letters and all of his stuff as he reached the end of his time where he had a final breakdown and he never recovered. Klossowski's talking about the very same process that Nietzsche is writing about, this back and forth between illness and health and seeing one through the other. He's presuming Nietzsche's writing is following Nietzsche's writing. So, kind of a lot, as you might say. But all of this has a handful of, we'll say, issues. And he needs to do a little bit of splaining. Because with all of this, and this next paragraph opens with this, but he's talking about the body subtracting cerebral activity from the self. What the fuck? Now, how is the self reestablished by the brain after this, after these breakdowns and after these setups? How do we end up in that place where this happens? How do these forces exist in a way? Because this seems to be counter to what we were talking about earlier. Right? That's how, to me, it seems to be countered earlier. So he asks, how can the body subtract the cerebral activity from what we call the self? And first of all, how is the self reestablished by the brain? Well, there is no other way than by passing through the limit that is constantly redrawn in and by the waking state. But the waking state never lasts more than a few seconds. At every instant, the brain is flooded by excitations of greater or lesser intensity, excitations whose overwhelming reception must be constantly filtered. The new excitations are filtered through the traces of prior excitations, which have already been absorbed. But the new excitations can be coordinated with prior ones only through assimilation, namely, by comparing what is habitual with what is foreign. As a result, the limit cannot help but be effaced. After a few seconds, a large part of the brain is already dormant. Any decision or resolution made to not think an action so as to be able to execute it presumes that only the trace of prior excitations is admitted, which assures the permanence of the self's identity. Thanks to the body's muteness, we appropriate the body for ourselves in order to remain upright. We create for ourselves an image of a meaning or a goal that we pursue in our thoughts and actions, namely, to remain the same as what we believe ourselves to be. Yes, that's a lot of anti-Oedipus for those of us who have joined that reading. It's a lot of anti-Oedipus right here. But this is so concisely said. It's kind of a lot, but I'll do my best. How is the self reestablished in the brain? There is no other way than by passing through the limit that is constantly redrawn in and by the waking state. So waking state is about when we're conscious, what we're aware of, the waking state. Within consciousness, there is a limit that is created and constantly redrawn through this process. We're going to be getting to that. The conscious activity makes up this waking state. But this waking state isn't a thing that is sort of forever. This is something that never lasts more than a few seconds, a few moments, really. This is the eternal now, you might say, through Bergson. The experience that you have of what you're aware of, that you're excited by, the excitations that you're experiencing. At every instant, the brain is flooded by stimulants, excitations of greater or lesser intensity, stimulants, connections, things happening, shit's coming in, and your brain's getting all of it. Even if you're not aware of it, your brain's getting all of it. And there's greater or lesser or neutral, does fine, but they're excitations. And their overwhelming reception must be constantly filtered. This is a real thing you do, by the way. When you can't smell your own breath very often, you don't know that you stink. You probably smell to someone on the planet, but you have long lost your own smell, and you're not aware of it. You can't really see your own nose in front of your face unless you consider to look at it. We filter out an exceptional amount of information constantly. The noise of the room that is backing up everything you're saying. All of that, that's where it is. The noise of the room is there, but you don't notice it. Not really. Everything that's coming in is constantly being filtered. Constantly being filtered. These new things are filtered, not magically, but through traces of prior excitations, which have already been absorbed, digested, you could say. The stimulant's made, and we absorb not in this moment. There is no such thing as a photo of anything. That's a shot in a moment. These stimulants these excitations are running over each other almost. They exist in time and leave traces. They leave recordings as they go. And they exist in that fourth dimension. They exist temporally. And so as they happen, as they happen, their thing they leave behind as time passes, and the trail, the thing that's left behind, the recording, that exists when a new excitation passes through. New excitation comes through, and the traces, you could even say the neural pathways that are established by past experience, these things become part of the structure of all of it. And as we do this, the new excitations can be coordinated with prior ones, but only through assimilation, mostly by saying, yep, that's me versus not. Disjunctive connection. I'm going to bring it back to that. If you're part of our AO reading, which you should be, because it's good, but this is the disjunctive interaction. These things come together and they're coordinating with prior things that are assimilated, but only through the habitual or foreign. Oh, that's me. That's not me. It's not as explicit as that because, again, it's not the forces aren't aware of me. They're not aware of you. They're not aware of what you're thinking. This is the conscious experience. The things that are habitual, that are repetitive, where the record groove is a little deeper, where the river has run through before, you're more apt to have water run through there again. Where lightning has struck before, it's actually far more likely that lightning will strike there again. The habitual continually is able to make its way through. The foreign, the fundamentally new or alternative categories that exist, that's the other thing. It's a whole other thing. And because of this, the limit cannot help but be effaced. After a few seconds, a large part of the brain already becomes dormant. There is, again, you get a few seconds of this, and then it happens again and again and again and again, and again, over and over and over. Eternally recurring as a sort of continually looping circle as a thing. Right? Yeah, right? All right. After a few seconds, a large part of the brain is already dormant. So it doesn't take a long time for your brain, the consciousness, your awareness of a thing to be not there. And you're not aware of it anymore. Dormant here doesn't mean dead. It just means not active. The There are peaks of neural activity. There's peaks of awareness. There's peaks of setup here that happens among sort of the unconscious processing. These peaks happen, but they go away. And that thing we become aware of, after a few seconds, we're not anymore. We're not anymore. And with that, any decision or resolution made to not think an action so as to be able to execute it presumes that only the trace of prior excitations is admitted, which assures the permanence of the self's identity. You can't think an action. Have you tried this? Do it. Like really, every step. You have to think every step. You can't. Like we don't do this. It's if you want to have a real dissociative moment, really go through the process of trying to think an action versus just doing it. Picking a thing up. I'm going to think these words rather than just saying the words. That any decision made to not think an action so as to be able to execute it presumes that only the trace of prior excitations is admitted, which assures the permanence of the self's identity. Action is necessitating that you filter out new input, right? Because it's doing a thing. Thinking will interfere with the action. So to execute it requires filtering out new input. You're doing a thing. You're no longer considering it or thinking about it. And as such, the selective attention that comes from that reinforces. You doing things at all reinforces the self. Necessarily. Because you can't think an action, you must do an action. Okay? Right? Does that make sense? So, and again, this isn't, we're not talking about something that's like extremely conscious, like you're aware of talking about a thing. If you pick your nose, scratch your ass, involuntary movements, whatever they may be, we're not talking about you thinking a long time before them. Generally, we're not talking about thinking at that level. Thinking is the action of the thing. There's a lot happening here. But it's the idea that action requires this sort of odd inhibition of cognition. It's really a wild sort of set of paradoxes he's playing with as I read it. And they have the line in there, the body's muteness. The body's muteness, we appropriate the body for ourselves in order to remain upright. The ego appropriation, the body's muteness, is really about how the way that words or how we speak of it or how we give voice to our consciousness or what we see as our consciousness sort of colonizes the embodied existence we have. And it does so for the preservation of identity. I'm going to pick that up. Brooks threw the ball. Brooks is talking here. You're writing notes. You're listening to Brooks. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Any of these things. Any of these is about rebuilding that self and again, keeping us upright, human, as we are, as we see this entire thread and we build that. We create for ourselves an image of meaning or a goal we pursue in our thoughts and actions to remain the same as what we believe ourselves to be. Oh, I'd never do something like that. I can't imagine that I would do that. Yeah. Who are we? We create these things. We build them. We very much do. I really, 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 really like this book, by the way. If you can't tell, like I really fucking just go absolutely nuts about like the language of this because it's just so fucking smart and so well written. But that last bit is kind of the thing. It's we create goals to preserve what we believe we are. But all of that comes at the end of these impulses, but they're also part of the impulses. And the way that they exist is in those moment to moment, the moments of clarity or consciousness that then fall back on and create the controls of the rest of it. It's a complete change in what these things mean and how they work. I really like this book. I should stop saying that, but I'm going to keep doing it. There's no such thing as a photo of anything. It's the photos are, and this is the challenge of photos. I recommend Laura Wells' non-photography on this. The nature of what photos are versus what we see them as, and because what they are is they're just a recording. They're photons that hit a piece. They're photons reflected off things that hit a piece of paper. They're actually not representative in any meaningful sense, but we see them as such. We see a photo of us. There's a weird, it's a little bit like the Mitch Hedberg joke.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree. It just the phrasing hit me funny. So
No, it's fine. It's a worthwhile thing to linger on for a moment, because Mitch Hedberg has this joke. Someone's like, "Hey man, look at this, a photo of me when I was younger." It's like, fuck you. Every photo's of you when you were younger. Which is a great line. He goes, if someone comes up to me and goes, "Hey, here's a photo when I was older," I'd be like, "Where the fuck you get that camera?" Like that is kind of the thing. It's a recorded singular moment, but it's not even a moment. It's a flash of photons, but we can add so fucking much to it. But there's no such thing as a photo of anything happening. We see because we understand photos temporally. If you see a photo of a guy with a baseball bat, like mid swing, you know he's mid swing because you understand how time works for us and how things work for us. But it's not a photo of a guy swinging a bat. There's no such thing as a photo of a guy swinging a bat. It's not possible because it's a photo. Yet, it works, and we can do such a thing. This is not saying this is why it's important to understand the like really particular dichotomy Deleuze, Klossowski, Laura Well, and others are playing with. It's not saying that photos don't exist. It's why it's probably important that I probably dive in when I say things like that. But saying instead that we need to understand how photos reveal how we condition ourselves to understand the world. And that's
the process of sense making.
Exactly. And so when we talk about how we exist or how I exist, we feel, and I flatly experience my life as it feels as though I've experienced it as a series of connected events or even a singular totality. Even right now, I could very much tell you that I feel myself as a single being who's existed throughout 45 years. But have I? I can do that, and I can talk of such a thing. But is that it? Or is there not a lot more processes happening that the language of things that we speak of obfuscates, covers over, and creates even our own understanding of ourselves in a pretty fucking drastic and dramatic way? And that's, if there is a thing in here, kind of a huge fucking thing. Duchamp's descending the staircase. Yes, Darren, absolutely. It's yeah, I will just say this is a very, very good book. It's just a very good book. So does this part make sense in and of itself? Again, there's going to be stuff coming and there's a lot more to discuss. I'm not going to say otherwise, but I'm going to try to get us through, I think, the next 3 paragraphs. And I think we can do that before I have to bounce out. I've got a video I'm slowly trying to put together on the nature of how people handle information and stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it because it's about Trump and AI, because his new videos are faked, and it's pretty amazing and fascinating. But they're faked in a particular way, and I need to go through that. It's a whole fucking thing. So I got time. I need to do that. So I'm not Brooks on the video. Well, that's the thing is, to you, there is a Brooks, a thread that is a series of your conscious waking states that even themselves aren't actually continuous or contiguous even. That the excitations that you experience that are what you assign to Brooks, you understand them in time because this is the phrasing and the word and the language. It's what's incredible about all this. So this is the thing. This next little paragraph, as we're sort of moving forward, this is a very cerebral thing we're doing right now. And that's kind of the thing. The body, subtract the cerebral activity from what we call the self. What about this? How do we do this? How do we instead to corporealize, to restore these corporealizing forces, the impulses, to thought amounts to an expropriation of the agent, of the self. Yet Nietzsche brought about this restoration and expropriation through his brain. He used his lucidity to penetrate the shadows. But how can one remain lucid if one destroys the locus of lucidity, namely the self? What would the consciousness be without an agent? How can memory subsist if it has to deal with things that no longer belong to the self? How can we remember as a being that can remember everything except itself? I really like this a lot. Sorry, I'll shut up. I just fucking really like it. He used his lucidity to penetrate the shadows, but how can you remain lucid if one destroys the locus of lucidity? How can one peer into the abyss and make their way out? I think would be another way to phrase this. Because once you've gone, once there is no self, once there is no agent, how do you find any of this? Because it's very simple. He actually made a way to and we'll go into this, but and Nietzsche talks about this. Self exists in a very interesting way for him, but it's certainly not in the standard hardline way where we talk about the self. That's not really what Nietzsche did. That wasn't his jam. It's like, there isn't really a self, but there is. There was a Nietzsche, and Nietzsche talked about the self, but there really isn't. How do we get to that? What is this odd place, this odd thing? To restore these corporealizing forces, the impulses, the bodily forces, the corporealizing, to thought. How do we restore the somatic to thought? Amounts to an expropriation of the agent of the self. Yet, Nietzsche brought about this restoration and expropriation through his brain. There's a big fucking issue here. There's a paradox almost of self-reflexivity. There's a fundamentally in Nietzsche, and it's one of the things I think attracts a lot of people to Nietzsche. Leads to some bad readings, leads to some good readings, but it's like there's a paradox that is talking about sort of rational consciousness existing, but it sort of transcends the bodily, but it's from the bodily. But how do you do this? How does this actually end up happening? How do we deal with things as a philosophical method? Because within what we've talked about so far, there is just paradoxes rife in all of it. Consciousness attempts to understand itself, but if it's bodily, how does consciousness, I can do this, you can do this, we can understand ourselves, we talk about ourselves as a thing. How the fuck does that happen? How do we talk about it? How do we talk about ourselves if it's not the body's right? Oh, a question in stream chat. Aloe vera. What do you mean by impulses? Something along the lines of how you react and act towards existing power structures? No, that's individualized. This is pre-consciousness, this is like the discomfort your bladder feels right now. And I would not even say that. It's the multitude of ways your bladder is giving you feelings right now. And is expressing itself impulsively with nerves and into your brain. The way that you're bothered by certain noises or sounds or scratches or sensations or the bug bite or whatever it is, all of those things, the reactivity directly is impulses. And when we talk about impulses in this sense, this is more in line with when they talk about desire or libido, the pre-conscious, unconscious energy that is sort of pulsing through these various things. the impulses, pulsions, are really fundamental psychosomatic things. It's not really a response to a power structure, although there probably is. We'll get to that, sort of how that works, but it is bodily and affective. Affective. It's that. It's forces that manifest, as he said, in moods as much as in thought. The play here is not talking about it in terms of goal or being directed, although, as we just said, these do become directed. How does that fuck? But we're not quite there yet, just to go back to what impulses themselves are. They are themselves pre-political. There may be coming at some point here something that makes them sort of meta-political, which is a whole fucking thing in of itself, but it is the forces that sort of are at work before you give them voice. I hope that makes sense, Vera. Does anyone else have a better way to describe it? Because we'll be getting into it, but it's think less my reaction to my intellectualized reaction to Charlie Kirk's death, or my intellectualized reaction to Donald Trump having a stroke. I understand what these things are and what they're doing, but I've given them a lot more than they are themselves. I've intellectualized them. I've actually given them word and power and spoken in directionality and moral and ethical things. Once I've done that, seeing the images of the actual thing happening, there's a bodily immediate, I hate that I can't use the word grok anymore. Robert Heinlein used the term a lot in his writing, grokking, where it's the grasping of something without intellectualizing it, where you grok it, you cognize. But there's a bodily reactive part to that that's a big deal. It's the force of life itself. Yes, August, but it's not a singular force. It's the forces of life that you are incredibly complicated within. We like to think of ourselves as being a single organism. Brooks is doing this. Brooks wants this. I think of that. But the body is going in a million directions. Anyone who has any semblance of mental non-normativity, and also anyone who isn't really, knows this feeling where you're on the more extreme end, you really are starving and you really need to eat food, but your stomach hurts and you can't bring yourself to do it. Or the smell of the food immediately makes you want to vomit, so you don't eat, but you're starving. Your body is filled with contradictory forces. Bodily sensations, bodily reactions to stimuli that are not in one direction. Yet you find a way to, right in that direction, you find a way to make it all seem like it's all in one direction. And how? Well, this is what they're talking about. Oh, Pashy, I've got a video coming about that. People who are very, very happy Charlie Kirk is dead. One, I think it's sad people feel the need to performatively tell everyone. You can feel however you want. I'm not here to judge anyone. But there's a difference between feeling it and feeling the need to write on a poster and go outside and scream about how happy you are. And that's what posting on the internet is. And I think it's very strange that you're driven to do that. And I don't think it's a simplistic reaction. The idea of any single person who is not actually formative of the larger power structure and won't change anything, the celebration of a human death, I think is weird. But again, you get to feel however you want. Just the weird performativity around it is just weird as shit to me. But that's not what we're here about today. We're trying to get away from the depressing shit. So, that's 2:00. We did, you know what? We're going to stop there. We'll stop at 32, and I'm going to mark it up. Let's see what we can do here. Boop, boop. All right. All right, so this is going to be here. Boop, 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 boop. And this would be for today's 9/11. No shit. So this will be for 9/18. Easy enough. Easy enough. Any last questions, thoughts, anything before I bounce out? Because I've got and I'll be turning off the stream because I don't want to go over on stream. But in here, I'm going to actually see if people can understand what I'm explaining about the weird videos, because it's really interesting. But we'll stop the recordings and switch to the other channel when I do that. Let me see if I can jump over, and we will see who else is doing some streaming today. And I will be sending you on because, as all of you know, this is the highlight of my week. I fucking adore this. This is one of my favorite books. If you can't tell, there's a reason I've fallen in love with... I've big time fallen in love with everything that's written in here. Klossowski's writing in general. I find it overall very interesting, very stunning, and I think a lot more can be done around all of it. So I think it's pretty great. Let's see. Who's live that I can send everyone to? Is there anyone would be a better question. Nope. Doesn't look like it. So, nope. All about that. India's Got Talent is got its own YouTube channel. I don't think I'll be sending you there. So I guess it's going to be just closing out. Later tonight, I will be probably streaming, going over a handful of things because I find stuff happening in our world right now horrifying and eternally fascinating. How people react to it. People are very odd. Very odd. This weekend, we are starting on the QC. I believe it's Sunday. Might be Saturday. Let me check the events. Saturday, we have our Spinoza reading, and I'm doing my AO open house. And then we have, on Sunday, we're starting the cinema series, Deleuze's cinema series. And we're beginning with the movement image. Close reading all the way through, and it's going to be a long one. But if you have any interest in the idea of how Deleuze would utilize signs and sense, it's hard for me not to say this is one of the more important books. So, absolutely. Check that out. If you want to join us live, you're more than welcome to discord.gg/DGQC. And if you like supporting all of this, if you have a couple extra bucks, if you don't worry about it. If you do, head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. A couple bucks a month goes an extremely, extremely long way. So just want to say thank you for all of that. And thank you for joining.